Tom and Sarah had been married for over 10 years. They were a lovely couple, and everyone who knew them loved them. They were kind, caring, and always put each other first. Despite their happiness, there was one thing that was missing from their lives: a child. Tom and Sarah had always wanted to be parents, but no matter how hard they tried, they just couldn't seem to get pregnant. At first, they didn't worry too much about it. They were young, and they figured that they had plenty of time to start a family. But as the years went by, and they still hadn't gotten pregnant, they began to feel a little anxious. Tom and Sarah tried everything to get pregnant. They went to see doctors, took fertility tests, and even tried alternative treatments like acupuncture. But no matter what they did, they just couldn't seem to conceive. As the years went by, Tom and Sarah began to feel like they were missing out on something special. They would see their friends and family members having babies, and they would feel a pang of sadness. They wondered if they would ever experience the joy of parenthood. Despite their struggles, Tom and Sarah's love for each other never wavered. They were each other's rock, and they supported each other through thick and thin. One day, Tom turned to Sarah and said, "You know, I don't care if we ever have kids or not. You are my family, and I love you more than anything in the world." Sarah smiled, feeling grateful for Tom's love and support. "I love you too, Tom," she said. "We may not have children, but we have each other, and that's all that matters." Tom and Sarah continued to live their lives to the fullest. They traveled, spent time with friends and family, and enjoyed each other's company. They knew that they were blessed to have each other, and they were grateful for every moment they spent together. As the years went by, Tom and Sarah continued to live their lives together, childless but happy. However, not everyone was supportive of their decision. Tom's mother, Margaret, had always been a bit of a thorn in Sarah's side. She had never approved of Sarah, and had always made it clear that she thought Tom deserved better. As the years went by, Margaret's disapproval of Sarah only grew stronger. She would often make snide comments about Sarah's inability to have children, and would blame her for Tom's lack of offspring. "You're the one who's barren, not my son," Margaret would say, her voice dripping with venom. "If you were a real woman, you'd be able to give my son the children he deserves." Sarah tried to ignore Margaret's insults, but it was hard. She felt like she was being constantly belittled and blamed for something that wasn't her fault. Tom tried to defend Sarah, but even he couldn't withstand his mother's constant barrage of insults. "Mom, that's enough," Tom would say, but Margaret would just ignore him and continue to berate Sarah. As time went on, Sarah began to feel like she was walking on eggshells around Margaret. She never knew when the older woman would lash out at her, and she began to feel like she was losing herself in the process. "I don't know how much more of this I can take," Sarah said to Tom one day, tears streaming down her face. "Your mother is suffocating me." Tom pulled Sarah into a hug. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he said. "I know my mother can be difficult. But I promise you, I will always stand up for you." But as time went on, even Tom's support couldn't shield Sarah from Margaret's constant insults and blame. Sarah began to feel like she was losing her sense of self, and she didn't know how much longer she could take it. As Sarah struggled to cope with her mother-in-law's constant insults and blame, she turned to her friend, Emily, for comfort. Emily had always been a good listener, and Sarah valued her opinion. Emily would often invite Sarah over for coffee, and listen attentively as Sarah poured out her heart about her struggles with Margaret. Emily would offer words of encouragement, and remind Sarah that she was a wonderful person, deserving of love and respect. But what Sarah didn't know was that Emily had an ulterior motive for being so supportive. Emily had always had a secret crush on Tom, and she saw Sarah's struggles as the perfect opportunity to get closer to him, as Emily continued to pretend to be Sarah's comfort. She would often find excuses to drop by Tom and Sarah's house, supposedly to check in on Sarah. But in reality, she was trying to get Tom's attention, and flirt with him behind Sarah's back. Tom, oblivious to Emily's intentions, would often chat with her, grateful for the distraction from his mother's constant drama. Emily would laugh at his jokes and touch his arm, making Tom feel like he was the only person in the room. Sarah, however, began to notice that Emily was spending an awful lot of time at their house. She would catch glimpses of Emily flirting with Tom, and start to feel a growing sense of unease. "Emily's just being friendly," Tom would say, when Sarah confronted him about it. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As Sarah's suspicions about Emily's intentions grew, Emily began to take a more subtle approach. She started to offer Sarah advice, supposedly to help her deal with the stress of her mother-in-law's constant insults. "Sarah, I think you need to take a break from Tom," Emily said one day, as they sat sipping coffee. "You're so focused on him and your marriage, but you need to think about yourself for once." Sarah was taken aback by Emily's suggestion. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean, you need to get out there and start living," Emily said. "Meet new people, have some fun. You don't have to be tied down to Tom all the time." Sarah felt a surge of anger at Emily's suggestion. She knew that Emily was just trying to get rid of her, so that she could have Tom all to herself. "Emily, I love my husband," Sarah said, her voice firm. "I'm not interested in meeting other people or having an affair. My marriage is important to me, and I'm not going to jeopardize it just to satisfy your own desires." Emily's face fell, and for a moment, Sarah saw a flash of anger in her eyes. But then, Emily's mask slipped back into place, and she smiled sweetly at Sarah. "Oh, Sarah, I'm just trying to help," Emily said. "I want what's best for you, and I think you need to take a step back and reevaluate your marriage." But Sarah was not fooled. She knew that Emily's advice was not motivated by a desire to help her, but by a desire to get rid of her and have Tom for herself. And Sarah was determined to protect her marriage, no matter what. Emily's flirtatious behavior continued, and she found herself jumping from one man to another. She didn't care about any of them, she just loved the attention and the thrill of the chase. But one day, Emily woke up to find herself pregnant. She was shocked and scared, and she had no idea who the father was. She had been with so many men, and she hadn't been careful. Panicked, Emily decided to take drastic measures. She set her sights on Tom, Sarah's husband, and began to flirt with him shamelessly. She would touch his arm, bat her eyelashes, and make suggestive comments, all in an attempt to seduce him, but Tom was not interested. He was a faithful husband, and he loved Sarah dearly. He rejected Emily's advances, and told her to stop flirting with him. Undeterred, Emily invited Tom over to her house, supposedly to discuss a work project. She had other plans, however. She drugged Tom's wine, hoping to take advantage of him when he was incapacitated. As Tom sat on Emily's couch, sipping his wine, he began to feel dizzy and disoriented. Emily smiled to herself, thinking that she had finally got what she wanted. But little did she know, her plan was about to backfire in a major way. As Tom sat on the couch, feeling dizzy and disoriented, Emily saw her chance. She tried to seduce him, but Tom, even in his drugged state, was able to resist her advances. Despite her best efforts, Emily was unable to get Tom to cooperate. She was furious and frustrated, but she refused to give up. In a desperate bid to get what she wanted, Emily came up with a plan. She would lie and say that Tom had slept with her, and that he was the father of her unborn child. Tom, still feeling the effects of the drugged wine, was in no state to defend himself. Emily took advantage of his vulnerability and began to spread her lies. She told Sarah that Tom had cheated on her, and that he was the father of her baby. Sarah was devastated, and she didn't know what to believe. Tom, still trying to clear his head, was unable to deny Emily's accusations. He knew that he hadn't slept with her, but he had no way of proving it. As the days went by, the situation became more and more complicated. Emily's lies had caused a rift between Tom and Sarah, and it seemed like nothing could ever repair the damage that had been done. Despite the chaos that Emily's lies had caused, Tom and Sarah's love for each other remained strong. They knew that Tom had not cheated on Sarah, and they were determined to get to the bottom of Emily's deceit. But just as they thought things couldn't get any worse, Tom's mother, Margaret, stepped into the picture. She had always been a manipulative and controlling person, and she saw an opportunity to get rid of Sarah and replace her with Emily. Margaret was delighted when she heard about Emily's supposed pregnancy, and she immediately began to pressure Tom into marrying Emily. She told him that it was his duty to take care of Emily and the baby, and that he should chase Sarah out of the house. Tom was horrified by his mother's suggestion. He knew that he had done nothing wrong, and he was determined to clear his name and protect his marriage to Sarah. But Margaret was relentless, and she continued to pressure Tom into doing what she wanted. As the situation continued to escalate, Tom and Sarah found themselves facing a difficult decision. Should they stand up to Margaret and fight for their marriage, or should they give in to her demands and risk losing each other forever? In a surprising move, Sarah came up with an idea. She suggested that Emily move in with them, so that they could support her during her pregnancy and help her with the baby after it was born. Tom was hesitant at first, but Sarah convinced him that it was the right thing to do. They decided to set up a guest room for Emily and make her feel welcome in their home. However, things quickly took a turn for the worse. Emily began to take advantage of Sarah's kindness and generosity. She would constantly try to get Tom's attention, flirting with him and trying to get him to spend time with her alone. Sarah tried to be patient and understanding, but Emily's behavior was wearing thin. Emily would often make snide comments about Sarah, calling her names and making her feel belittled. "You're so boring and plain," Emily would say. "Tom deserves someone more exciting and beautiful, like me." Sarah tried to ignore Emily's jabs, but it was hard. She felt like she was walking on eggshells, never knowing when Emily would lash out at her next. Tom, however, seemed oblivious to Emily's behavior. He would often defend her, saying that she was just stressed and overwhelmed by her pregnancy, but Sarah knew better. She knew that Emily was manipulating Tom, playing on his sympathy and kindness to get what she wanted. And what she wanted was Tom, all to herself. As the days went by, Emily's behavior towards Sarah became more and more unbearable. She would constantly insult Sarah, making her feel small and insignificant. "You're just a useless wife," Emily would say. "You can't even give Tom a child. What's the point of you being here?" Sarah tried to ignore Emily's hurtful words, but it was hard. She felt like she was walking on eggshells, never knowing when Emily would lash out at her next. The tension in the house became palpable, and Sarah began to feel like a stranger in her own home. She would often go to bed crying, praying for God to wipe away her tears and give her the strength to endure. "Dear God," Sarah would pray, "I don't know how much more of this I can take. Please give me the strength to forgive Emily and to love her despite her flaws. And please, dear God, bring peace back to our home." But despite her prayers, the situation in the house only seemed to get worse. Emily's behavior became more and more erratic, and Sarah began to feel like she was losing her grip on reality. Tom, however, seemed oblivious to the tension in the house. He would often come home from work and ask Sarah why she was so upset, but when Sarah tried to explain, he would just tell her that she was being too sensitive. "You're just being paranoid, Sarah," Tom would say. "Emily's not that bad. She's just stressed out because of the baby," but Sarah knew that Tom was wrong. Emily's behavior was not just about stress or hormones. It was about manipulation and control. Sarah's life became a living hell as Emily's behavior towards her became more and more torturous. Emily would often make Sarah do all the household chores, and would criticize her constantly. Tom's family, especially his mother, Margaret, also joined in on the torture. They would often come to the house and belittle Sarah, making her feel like she was worthless. But despite all the pain and suffering she was going through, Sarah never lost faith in God. She continued to pray and trust in Him, knowing that He would deliver her from her troubles. One day, after months of praying and trusting in God, Sarah received an unexpected surprise. She discovered that she was pregnant with her husband's child. Sarah was overjoyed and couldn't wait to share the news with Tom. But when she told him, she was met with a mixture of shock and skepticism. "How is this possible?" Tom asked, looking stunned. "We've been trying for years and nothing's happened," Sarah smiled and said. "God has answered my prayers, Tom. He has blessed us with a child." Tom looked at Sarah with newfound respect and admiration. He realized that his wife's faith and trust in God had been the key to their blessing. As the news of Sarah's pregnancy spread, Emily's behavior towards her became even more erratic. She was furious that Sarah was carrying Tom's child, and she began to plot and scheme against her, but Sarah was not afraid. She knew that God was on her side, and that He would protect her and her unborn child from harm. As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, she and Tom grew closer together. They began to rebuild their relationship, and their love for each other became stronger than ever. And as for Emily, she was left to face the consequences of her own actions. She had tried to destroy Sarah's marriage and reputation, but in the end, she was the one who was left looking foolish and ashamed. As the months went by, Emily's pregnancy progressed, and she eventually gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. But just as she was basking in the joy of motherhood, one of her old boyfriends, Alex, showed up at her doorstep, claiming that the baby was his. Emily was taken aback by Alex's claim, but she knew that she had been with him around the time she got pregnant. She had also been with several other men, including Tom, but she had been trying to convince everyone that Tom was the father. To settle the matter once and for all, a DNA test was carried out. Emily was nervous but confident that the test would prove Tom to be the father, but when the results came back, Emily's world was turned upside down. The DNA test revealed that Tom was not the father of Emily's baby. In fact, the test showed that Alex was the father. Emily was devastated. She had been so convinced that Tom was the father, and she had been so desperate to get him to herself. She felt ashamed and embarrassed, and she didn't know how to face Tom and Sarah. But as she sat in her room, feeling sorry for herself, Emily realized that she had to come clean. She had to confess what she had done, and she had to apologize for her actions. With a heavy heart, Emily went to Tom and Sarah's house, and she confessed everything. She told them about her plan to seduce Tom, and she told them about the DNA test results. Tom and Sarah were shocked. But they were also relieved. They had known that something was off about Emily's story, and they were glad to finally have the truth. Emily, on the other hand, felt like she had hit rock bottom. She had lost the respect of Tom and Sarah, and she had lost her own self-respect. But as she looked at Tom and Sarah, she saw the forgiveness in their eyes, and she knew that she had been given a second chance. After Emily's confession, Tom and Sarah's relationship became stronger than ever. They were finally able to put the past behind them and focus on their future together. Months went by, and Sarah's pregnancy progressed. She and Tom were overjoyed when they found out that they were having twins. Finally, the day arrived, and Sarah gave birth to two beautiful babies, a boy and a girl. Tom was by her side, holding her hand and coaching her through the delivery. As they held their newborn babies in their arms, Tom and Sarah knew that their love had conquered all. They had faced so many challenges and obstacles, but in the end, they had come out stronger and more in love than ever. Tom's family, who had once been so opposed to Sarah, finally came around. They saw how much Tom loved Sarah, and they saw how happy she made him. They realized that they had been wrong to judge her, and they apologized for their behavior. Margaret, Tom's mother, was especially remorseful. She had been the one who had led the charge against Sarah, and she had been the most vocal in her opposition. But now, she saw the error of her ways, and she begged Sarah for forgiveness. Sarah, with her kind heart, forgave Margaret and the rest of Tom's family. She knew that they had been misled by Emily's lies, and she didn't hold it against them. From that day on, Tom's family welcomed Sarah with open arms. They treated her like one of their own, and they showered her and the twins with love and affection. Tom and Sarah lived happily ever after, surrounded by their loving family. They knew that their love had conquered all, and they were grateful for every moment they spent together.